I'm Jonah Comstock, Editor-in-Chief of Pharma Forum. I'm here at JP Morgan 2024 on day 2. We're at the Hotel Nikko, and I'm joined by Heap. He's the program lead for a new in-development Takeda drug that we're going to be talking about. Thanks for sitting down with me, Graham.
Thanks so much, Jonah. So I'm really excited to talk about TAK-279 today.
Yes, so tell me about TAK-279. Is this the main thing you're here at JPM discussing? Or?
So I'm here doing lots of things. As you know, Takeda has recently moved into a kind of broader immunology expansion of our pipeline. So we're here talking to lots of companies about their products in both gastroenterology and immunology. But I'm also doing a little bit of work talking about what we're doing in TAK-279.
So tell me about TAK-279. What's the indication? What's the mechanism of action? What gets you excited about it?
So this is an asset we acquired from Nimbus Therapeutics earlier last year. Now we've had the asset for almost a year now, and it's an allosteric TYK2 inhibitor. So the really thing we like about this molecule is it has a really high selectivity. So we're kind of terming next generation selectivity. TYK2 inhibitors, the goal really is to try and inhibit TYK2 as much as you can without inhibiting any of the other JAK kinases that go along with it. And TAK-279 has a 1.3 million fold selectivity, which means we can hopefully dose and inhibit the TYK2 target at a really high level and not get inhibition of the other JAK kinases. So we're taking this forward in 4 indications at present, all at the same time, which we've managed to move all of those forward in the last year. So we're taking it forward in psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis, and then looking at a variety of other things that we could put this drug into.
Now, this approach of pursuing the indication simultaneously, is that related to IRA? Is it like a trial run for that, or?
It's not specifically IRA related. I think our lead indication is psoriasis, and we've moved that forward into phase 3. It's already up and running as patients enrolled into the study. But once the psoriasis trials are finished, obviously we're aware that for a number of reasons, the clock starts ticking on the molecule. So it makes sense for us when we have a molecule with what we think is really good proof of concept data in psoriasis, we've got good proof of concept in psoriatic arthritis, to move that forward as quickly as we can. And then in Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, we're running phase 2 proof of concept studies to really see if this is a target which, if you inhibit at really high levels, gets you good efficacy in those indications. And it just makes sense for us to do it at the same time.
So give me a little context on these selectivity numbers compared to what's out there now. I mean, how big of a leap forward is this?
It's really hard to do direct head-to-head numbers, but I think if you look, there's one TYK2 inhibitor that's on the market at the moment from BMS, so TYK2. I think if you look at our selectivity numbers, I think it's clear that we have a significant advantage in terms of how selective the compound is. I think we have to caveat that and say, obviously we have to see how that plays out in the clinic. There's a difference between what we see in the selectivity preclinically and whether that actually translates into difference is in patients. Our hope is that it does. We think we have a pretty good rationale for that, but we're running phase 3 programs for a reason to prove that.
And what is it about it that allows you to have that differentiation? Is there some new technology under the hood? Is it just a really good target?
I think it's 2 things. One, it's just a really good target, and it's a really good molecule. So it's an allosteric inhibitor, like TYK2 is also an allosteric inhibitor. So that means rather than binding to the active site of the kinase, it binds to the regulatory domain of the kinase. And that regulatory domain is very conserved in TYK2. It's not shared by JAK1, 2, or 3. So you get this really high selectivity. And there's a specific difference between this TYK2 and other TYK2s out there, which means it doesn't bind any of the other JAK allosteric pockets. And that's really unique about the way this was designed. And Nimbus did a fantastic job, aided by Schrödinger to design this.
What is the danger if it's not selective enough, if it's binding to things that it shouldn't bind to?
I mean, I think if you look at the JAK inhibitors that are approved on the market at the moment, you've got compounds that inhibit JAK1, JAK2, JAK3, or a combination of all of those things. And they suffer from a range of side effects. And the FDA has given those compounds black box warnings for those side effects. So there's issues with serious infections, with malignancies, with blood clots, with gastric perforations, a number of those kind of issues that JAK inhibitors themselves have been associated with. So far, we haven't seen that with deucravacitinib, and our hope is that we don't see that with our compound as well.
Got it. So lay out the roadmap a little bit for me. You said you're in phase 3 with the lead indication?
That's right. So we've got phase 2 data from psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. So our psoriasis trial has started. We've got 2 phase 3 trials. both of which are head-to-head trials versus apremilast. They've both started and they're both recruiting. They're big global trials, so we started those end of last year. We're pleased that they're well underway, and they're going to take a period of time to enroll. Our guidance at the moment is an approval in the 25 to 27 timeframe. Psoriatic arthritis, we announced and we actually publicly released the phase 2b data at ACR towards the end of last year. That phase 3 study is being designed literally as we speak by the team back in Boston. And those studies are going to start next year. And there's a kind of 1 to 2 year probable gap between the psoriasis and the PSA programs. And then the Crohn's and UC programs are a little bit further behind. They're both in phase 2. We don't have good proof of concept yet, but this target really works in IBD. So we want to take a little bit more cautious approach, get some really good proof of concept data, and then move that forward.
Take a step back with me. Let's talk about immunotherapy right now. It has not been, I think it's been overshadowed in sort of just the there's only a certain amount of hype available by some of these cell and gene things, but there's still so much happening in immunotherapy. What are kind of, to your mind at this conference hearing about what's going on, what do you think is kind of the big story of immunotherapies in 2023 and in 2024?
Well, I think the first thing is there's still a huge amount of unmet need. So these are conditions that affect millions of people. I have patients in my family, I'm sure other people have patients in their family that are affected by these kind of conditions. We're talking about things like psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease. These are relatively common conditions. We've had highly effective therapies on the markets for years now, and yet there's still a huge amount of unmet need. So I think the first thing that excites me is there is still a lot of development and a lot of moving forward in this space. But what I think we have seen is a little bit of an efficacy ceiling being reached by many of the therapies. So now we've seen lots of companies thinking, how can we take steps forwards? And I think there's lots that you're seeing being talked about. There's lots of combination work that people talk about putting things together. There's advances from CAR-T space moving towards immunities that are kind of trying to think about how we break those efficacy ceilings. And then there's new targets, and we're meeting people here all the time who've got new targets they're bringing forward into the clinic, not just targeting the same pathways, but actually looking at something novel. So I'm excited, honestly, that there's still so much work in this space.
Yeah, and it is interesting. Innovation feels like it's happening so fast in pharma right now that people are moving on to these step change innovations, but there's still so much work to be done on kind of the last thing or the ongoing things.
It's true, and I think one of the challenges a little bit with immunology is the trials that are needed tend to be very large trials, and you don't really know whether your drug is a step change in efficacy sometimes until you've got a long way through the development process. Yeah. So you have to have a lot of confidence in your target to be able to get that far forward.
Someone in a panel I was at today said that the only ways you actually make money in pharma are by being first in class or best in class, which is a lot of pressure to try to be in drug development.
I think that's partly true. I think there's definitely an advantage to having the best compound. I think one of the reasons we like 279, for example, is we think it's the best TYK2 inhibitor out there. It's the reason why we acquired it. So I believe in part of that mantra, at least.
You mentioned earlier that you may be further along in some ways in other parts of the world other than the US with this drug, is that?
No, so this drug's being developed globally. Okay. But we've started the trials. The first site happened to be in the US, but it'll be run as a global trial. This is an asset that we're planning to take far-wide if we're successful.
So when it comes time to approach the regulators, you'll approach regulators all over the world?
We'll approach regulators in the US, Europe, China, Japan.
Great. Anything else on your mind? What have you been doing with your time here at the show? Have you heard anything interesting?
I think most of the time I've spent here honestly has been talking to other companies and really trying to find that next product. I mean, I spent a lot of time thinking about TAK-279, but we know that drug development takes a long time. So, we have to think we're always thinking what's next and how can we improve upon what we're going to see.
Well, and that is a good opening for me to ask you a little bit about M&A, which I think everybody's talking about. And I'm not asking you to make any specific predictions on behalf of Takeda, but how are you thinking about it this year? And is it different than, this asset came to you through M&A, and is it different than maybe the last couple of years?
I think you heard our CEO, Christopher Weber, say that Takeda is still open to doing M&A, but we're going to be focused. And I think as a gastroenterology inflammation area, one of the things we're thinking about carefully is how we expand beyond what's been traditionally a very gastroenterology focused approach to think more about a broader approach into dermatology and rheumatology. And we're really starting to explore those areas.
Yeah, so you're really trying to get a wide survey of what's out there to find sort of the perfect company that really fits with your priorities.
Well, yeah, and I think we're doing it on a kind of asset by asset basis. We're looking for targeted things that really fit gaps that we have.
Makes sense. Anything else as you think about kind of Takeda? And I mean, I know you've got a specific department, but over the next year.
No, I mean, I think, as I said, I'm really hyper focused on getting TAK-279 moving forward. We're really excited that it's moved into phase 3, and our plan now is heads down and execute on that, and hopefully we can generate some really good data in the next couple of years.
Great. So you hope to see that on the market by 2025, 26?
So we've got 25 to 27.
Awesome. Well, I hope it works out. It sounds very promising.
Thanks so much.
Great.